Savannah Whitaker, 32, still remembers the sting of her parents' laughter when she announced her dream of opening a cafe. Stick to something stable, they said, pushing her toward corporate jobs while praising her brother Kyle's law career. 10 years later, Savannah stands in her wildly successful downtown cafe watching her brother seethe with jealousy while her parents awkwardly ask for financial help. The family that once mocked her vision now desperately needs what she's built, and Savannah has a decision to make. Before I continue with my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this tale of family drama and sweet revenge, hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. I post new family revenge dramas every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next in Savannah's journey to prove her family wrong. Savannah Whitaker had always been the family's dreamer, the one with unrealistic aspirations according to her parents, Margaret and Thomas. Growing up in their modest suburban home in Columbus, Ohio, Savannah's childhood kitchen experiments were tolerated as cute hobbies but never taken seriously. Her recipe notebooks were patted away with dismissive smiles while her brother Kyle's debate trophies earned prime placement in the family's living room display cabinet. Cooking is fine as a hobby, honey, but it's not a career path for someone with your potential. Her mother would say, sliding college brochures for business administration programs across the breakfast table. Her father, a bank manager who prided himself on practicality, would nod in agreement. Look at your brother, he's got the right idea. Law school has security. Real careers have benefits, packages, and retirement plans. Kyle, 2 years Savannah's senior, embraced his golden child status with a smugness that grew more pronounced with each academic achievement. While Savannah struggled through business classes that left her uninspired, Kyle sailed through pre-law with their parents' unwavering support, emotional and financial. Family dinners inevitably transformed into celebrations of Kyle's latest accomplishment, with Savannah's contributions to the meal itself barely acknowledged. During her junior year of college, Savannah took a part-time job at a local cafe to help pay for textbooks her parents deemed her responsibility, unlike Kyle's law books, which they considered investments. The small struggling cafe became her sanctuary. The owner, Elena, a sharp-witted woman in her 50s who had built the business from nothing, recognized something in Savannah that her family never had: genuine talent and passion. You have an instinct, Elena told her one evening as they experimented with a new pastry recipe long after closing. The way you understand flavors, the way you connect with customers, you can't teach that. For the first time, someone was taking Savannah's dreams seriously. Elena began teaching her, not just recipes, but business fundamentals, inventory management, cost control staff, scheduling, the practical aspects of running a cafe that complemented Savannah's natural creativity. These lessons felt more valuable than anything she was learning in her business administration classes. When Savannah tentatively shared her growing ambition to one day open her own cafe during Sunday dinner, the reaction was swift and devastating. Her father chuckled, setting down his fork. Honey, do you have any idea how many small businesses fail in their first year? Especially restaurants. It's not just a restaurant, Dad. It would be a community space with 70%, her mother interrupted, not even looking up from her plate. That's the failure rate. We didn't put you through business school for you to become a statistic. Kyle smirked from across the table. Maybe she could cater my law firm events when I make partner. That way she'd have at least one reliable client. Their laughter burned into Savannah's memory, the dismissive way they waved away her dream as if it were a child's fantasy of becoming a princess or an astronaut. Something cute, but ultimately impossible. Elena noticed Savannah's subdued demeanor when she returned to work the following day. After gentle probing, Savannah confessed the humiliation she'd experienced at her family's dinner table. Let me tell you something, Elena said, her voice firm as she wiped down the espresso machine. People who haven't built something from nothing will never understand what it takes. They're afraid of the risk because they can't imagine the reward. The words settled deep in Savannah's chest, taking root alongside the pain of her family's dismissal. When she graduated with her business degree, a compromise that had left her feeling hollow, her parents expected her to pursue corporate jobs like her classmates. Instead, Savannah continued working at Elena's cafe full-time, soaking up every bit of knowledge she could. "You're overqualified to be a barista," her mother complained during their weekly phone calls. "This isn't temporary anymore, Savannah. It's becoming embarrassing when people ask what you're doing with your degree." Meanwhile, Kyle had graduated from law school and secured a position at a prestigious firm in downtown Columbus. The family celebrations reached new heights. Champagne for his job offer a new car as a graduation gift. Weekly dinners out to commemorate his first successful cases. The contrast between their treatment of the siblings couldn't have been starker. What her family didn't know, what Savannah deliberately kept from them, was that she was saving every penny, building a business plan, and searching for the perfect location for her own cafe. Elena had become not just a mentor but a potential investor impressed by Savannah's dedication and growth. "They'll see," Savannah told Elena one night as they reviewed potential locations. "Someday they'll understand." Elena's expression was gentle but knowing. "The question is, will it matter by then? Are you doing this for them or for yourself?" It was a question that haunted Savannah as she finalized her business plan. Part of her, a part she wasn't proud of, wanted to succeed just to prove her family wrong. To see the looks on their faces when they realized how thoroughly they had underestimated her. But the larger part, the part that stayed up late perfecting recipes and researching suppliers, wanted this dream for herself. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A prime corner location in a rapidly developing area of downtown Columbus became available when a bookstore closed after 30 years. The rent was steep, but the potential was undeniable. Large windows, high ceilings, foot traffic from nearby offices, and the new luxury apartment complex across the street. When Elena offered to partner with her, providing both additional capital and expertise, Savannah knew this was her moment. Together, they signed a lease that would either make her dreams come true or prove her family right about her impractical aspirations. The night after signing the lease, Savannah sat in her small apartment staring at the business license bearing the name Prose and Pastries, a nod to the location's history as a bookstore and her vision for a cafe where literature and culinary arts would merge. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering over her parents' contact information. They should know, she thought. Maybe now they'd take her seriously. But the memory of their laughter echoed in her mind and she set the phone down. No, she decided. They would see when it was finished. When they couldn't dismiss it as just another pipe dream. For the first time in her life, Savannah was choosing to believe in herself more than she cared about her family's approval, and that decision alone felt like its own kind of victory. The 6 months that followed were a blur of renovation, permit applications, equipment purchases, and staff hiring. Savannah worked 18-hour days, transforming the empty storefront into her vision while continuing her shifts at Elena's cafe to maintain some income. Every decision, from the reclaimed wood tables to the locally sourced coffee beans, reflected her commitment to creating something truly special. Elena proved invaluable, using her connections with local suppliers to secure favorable terms and helping navigate the bureaucratic maze of health inspections and licensing. The partnership was everything Savannah had hoped for, supportive yet challenging, with Elena pushing her to justify every choice while respecting her overall vision. During this whirlwind period, Savannah maintained minimal contact with her family. Their weekly calls dwindled to brief monthly conversations where she deflected questions about her career, with vague references to working on a project with Elena. Her absence at family gatherings was noted with increasing irritation. "Your brother's being considered for junior partner already," her mother mentioned pointedly during one call. "The firm is hosting a celebration next month. You really should be there." "I'll try," Savannah replied non-committally, knowing she had scheduled tastings with potential bakery suppliers that weekend. "Try harder," her father's voice cut in from the extension. "Family supports family, Savannah. Kyle has always shown up for your endeavors." The implicit comparison stung, but Savannah bit back her retort. Kyle had never shown up for her. He'd attended her college graduation with poorly concealed boredom and had never once visited Elena's cafe in all the years she'd worked there. But arguing would only drain energy she needed elsewhere. 2 weeks before Prose and Pastries was scheduled to open, disaster struck. The vintage espresso machine Savannah had restored a beautiful copper centerpiece for the bar area, developed a critical malfunction that couldn't be repaired in time. The replacement would cost thousands they hadn't budgeted for. In a moment of weakness, Savannah called her parents. Not for money, she would never ask them for that after their dismissal of her dream, but perhaps for moral support, something to indicate they believed she could overcome this obstacle. "Well, honey, maybe this is a sign," her mother said after Savannah explained the situation. "There's no shame in recognizing when something isn't meant to be. Jameson Financial is still hiring for that account management position I told you about." "Mom, I'm not giving up. I just need to figure out the machine situation." Her father's heavy sigh came through the phone. "This is exactly why we worried about this venture. Unexpected costs always come up in business. It's Economics 101, which I took and passed." Savannah replied, her patience wearing thin. "I'm aware of how business works." "Clearly not," her father countered. "If you had a proper business plan with contingencies, I do have a proper business plan. Elena and I both." "Oh, Elena," her mother interrupted dismissively. "The woman who's encouraged this whole impractical dream." "Savannah, at some point you need to start listening to the people who actually know what's best for you." The call ended shortly after leaving, Savannah feeling worse than before. She sat on the floor of her half-finished cafe, surrounded by construction materials and the possibility of failure, and allowed herself 5 minutes of tears. Then Elena called. Through her network, she'd found a restaurant that was upgrading its equipment and willing to sell their commercial espresso machine, barely 2 years old, at a steep discount if they could take it immediately. "This is how business actually works," Elena told her as they drove to inspect the machine. "Not through cushioned safety nets, but through relationships and resilience. Remember that when your cafe is successful and your family tries to take credit for the business sense they supposedly instilled in you." The machine was perfect, and Prose and Pastries opened on schedule. Savannah deliberately didn't invite her family to the soft opening, instead focusing on local food bloggers, neighboring business owners, and the community she hoped to serve. The response was overwhelming. Lines formed before opening each morning, and local publications began featuring the cafe in their must-visit lists. 1 month into operations, as Savannah was beginning to believe in the cafe's sustainability, Kyle appeared at the counter during the morning rush. His expression as he took in the bustling space, the full tables, the efficient staff, the display case nearly empty by the day's demand, cycled from surprise to confusion to something like respect. "This is not what I expected," he admitted, when Savannah finally had a moment to speak with him. "What did you expect?" Savannah asked, genuinely curious about how her brother had envisioned her failure. Kyle shrugged his expensive suit, looking out of place among the cafe's rustic aesthetic. "I don't know. Something smaller, less professional. Mom and Dad made it sound like you were playing restaurant." "Playing restaurant," Savannah repeated, letting the condescension of the phrase hang between them. Kyle had the decency to look embarrassed. Their words, not mine. "Though I guess I didn't disagree." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "They don't know I'm here. They still think this is a phase you're going through." Savannah absorbed this information, unsurprised, but still disappointed. "And why are you here?" "Honestly, one of the senior partners mentioned this place. Said it was the best coffee in town, great for impressing clients." Kyle's laugh held a note of disbelief. "I nearly choked when he said the name. Had to see for myself." Before Savannah could respond, a staff member called her over to help with a large catering order that had just come in, their third that week, from a tech startup nearby. When she returned, Kyle was studying the cafe's event flyer for their upcoming literary night. You're doing readings and book signings, Savannah nodded. That's why we're called Prose and Pastries. We're hosting the author of that legal thriller everyone's reading next week. Something shifted in Kyle's expression, a flicker of what might have been jealousy. As a lawyer who had once harbored literary ambitions himself, quickly discouraged by their parents in favor of the more practical legal career, the idea that Savannah had created a space that merged culture with commerce clearly struck a nerve. You should come, Savannah offered, not entirely sure why she was extending the invitation. Kyle hesitated, then nodded. Maybe I will. He gathered his briefcase, preparing to leave. You know they're going to have to acknowledge this eventually. Once they see it. That's up to them, Savannah replied, surprised to realize she meant it. The burning need for her parents' approval had dimmed in the face of her growing success. But you're welcome to bring them by anytime. As Kyle left, Savannah returned to her work with a renewed sense of purpose. The family that had laughed at her dreams still didn't know what she had accomplished, but the first cracks in their dismissal were beginning to show. 3 months after opening, Prose and Pastries had not only established itself as a downtown staple, but had begun attracting attention beyond Columbus. A regional magazine had featured the cafe in a spread about innovative small businesses, highlighting Savannah's story of perseverance and Elena's mentorship. The accompanying photos capture the cafe's unique atmosphere, the walls lined with bookshelves, customers reading in comfortable chairs while enjoying artisanal pastries, the community board advertising local events. Kyle had returned several times, initially alone and later with colleagues. Each visit seemed to increase his discomfort as he witnessed Savannah's growing success. During one visit, he'd mentioned casually that he was considering telling their parents about the cafe's popularity. Do whatever you want, Savannah had responded, surprised by her own indifference. The validation she had once desperately craved now seemed less important than the daily affirmation she received from satisfied customers and her dedicated staff. On a busy Thursday afternoon, as Savannah was teaching a new barista the intricacies of their signature lavender latte, she looked up to find her parents standing at the entrance, taking in the scene with undisguised shock. Kyle stood slightly behind them, his expression unreadable. Savannah's heart raced as she approached them, wiping her hands on her apron. Mom, Dad, this is a surprise. Margaret Whitaker's gaze swept across the bustling cafe, lingering on the magazine feature framed near the register. Kyle finally told us about this place. Said we should see it for ourselves. Thomas cleared his throat. Quite an operation you've got here. The careful neutrality in his tone, neither congratulatory nor critical, was so typical that Savannah almost laughed. Even faced with obvious success, her father couldn't bring himself to admit he might have been wrong. Elena and I have worked hard, Savannah acknowledged, leading them to a reserved table in the corner. We're doing well. Elena's involved. Margaret's eyebrows rose. I assumed you were just managing for her. The assumption that Savannah couldn't possibly be an owner stung, but she kept her expression pleasant. We're partners, equal stake in the business. It was my concept, but her experience has been invaluable. As if summoned by her name, Elena emerged from the kitchen, immediately assessing the situation with the perceptiveness that had made her such an effective mentor. She approached with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You must be the Whitakers. Savannah's told me so much about you. The polite fiction hung in the air. Savannah had shared plenty about her family, but little of it had been positive. Elena set down a tray with samples of their most popular items, the rosemary shortbread, the cardamom buns, the chocolate espresso cake that had been featured in the magazine. On the house, I insist. As her parents sampled the offerings with reluctant appreciation, Kyle wandered around the cafe, examining book titles on the shelves and studying the community board where local events were posted. His focus lingered on a flyer announcing Prose and Pastries' selection as a venue for the upcoming Columbus Arts Festival, a prestigious recognition for a business less than 6 months old. This is really good, Margaret admitted, indicating the cardamom bun. I didn't realize you'd become such an accomplished baker. Savannah developed all our signature recipes, Elena interjected before Savannah could respond. The cardamom bun is actually our bestseller. We can barely keep them in stock. Thomas was scrolling through his phone and Savannah realized with a jolt that he was looking up reviews of the cafe. His eyebrows rose slightly as he read, suggesting he was finding consistently positive feedback. Your brother tells us you've been quite busy with this place, Margaret said, her tone suggesting Savannah had been neglecting family obligations rather than building a successful business. Opening a cafe requires full commitment, Savannah replied evenly, especially in the first year. And financially, Thomas asked, getting directly to what had always been his primary concern. These downtown rents must be substantial. Savannah exchanged a glance with Elena, who nodded slightly, permission to share what they had agreed would usually remain private. We broke even in the second month, Savannah stated flatly. We're projecting a significant profit by the end of our first year, assuming current growth continues. Our catering side business is already exceeding expectations. The naked surprise on her parents' faces might have been satisfying if it weren't so revealing of how little they had believed in her. Kyle rejoined them, setting his empty coffee cup on the table. They're hosting James Merritt next week, he informed their parents. The author. His new book is topping all the charts. We know who James Merritt is, Margaret replied, irritation edging her voice. The law firm tried to book him for a client appreciation event. Kyle continued, a muscle in his jaw twitching. Apparently, he only does select venues now, this being one of them. Savannah hadn't known this, that Kyle's firm had attempted and failed to secure the author her cafe would be hosting. The information settled uncomfortably, highlighting a competition she had never intended to create with her brother. It's a natural fit for our concept, she explained, trying to soften the implicit victory. Books and food have always been my two passions. Yes, well, Thomas cleared his throat again. It seems you found a way to make your interests work for you. That's commendable, I suppose. It was the closest thing to approval Savannah had ever received from her father regarding her culinary aspirations. Instead of the warm glow of validation she had once imagined, she felt oddly empty, as if his acknowledgement had come too late to matter. The conversation continued awkwardly, with her parents asking surface-level questions about the business, while carefully avoiding any mention of their previous dismissal of her dreams. Kyle grew increasingly quiet, his gaze shifting between Savannah and the magazine feature on the wall. As they prepared to leave, Margaret paused. We're hosting a family dinner this Sunday. Your brother has some news to share. You should come, it's been too long. Savannah hesitated, torn between her instinctive desire to please her parents and the boundaries she had been establishing. I'll check the schedule. Weekends are our busiest time. Of course they are. Thomas nodded, his tone suggesting he understood business priorities, even as his expression conveyed disappointment at her potential absence. After they left, Elena squeezed Savannah's shoulder. You okay, Savannah? Watched through the window as her family walked to their car, noticing how Kyle looked back at the cafe with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. I'm not sure, she admitted. That wasn't quite how I imagined that going. Family rarely responds the way we hope, Elena said wisely, especially when proving them wrong. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of customers and tasks, but Savannah's mind kept returning to her family's visit and the dinner invitation. Part of her wanted to decline to protect herself from whatever subtle undermining might occur. Another part wondered about Kyle's news and whether her absence would once again be framed as selfishness rather than self-preservation. I know we're at a pivotal moment in Savannah's story, and you're probably wondering what Kyle's big news could be, and whether Savannah should attend that family dinner. Before we continue this family drama, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you Team Savannah all the way? Or do you think she should try to rebuild bridges with her family? Drop a comment below with your prediction about what's coming next. And if you're enjoying this journey of sweet revenge and personal triumph, give this video a thumbs up so more people can discover it. Now let's see what happens when Savannah makes her decision. Savannah did attend the family dinner that Sunday, arranging for her assistant manager to close the cafe. She arrived carrying a box of her signature pastries, a peace offering of sorts, but also a tangible reminder of what she had built despite their doubts. The family home looked exactly as it always had, pristine and traditional, with Kyle's achievements prominently displayed. New photos had been added to the wall of fame in the hallway. Kyle in court, Kyle shaking hands with the mayor at a charity function, Kyle receiving an award from the Bar Association. Savannah's business success was conspicuously absent from the family gallery. Just in time, Margaret called from the kitchen. "Your brother's about to open champagne." Kyle stood in the dining room, an expensive bottle in hand, and an expression of practiced confidence on his face. Their father hovered nearby, practically vibrating with anticipatory pride. "Now that we're all here," Kyle announced, once the glasses had been distributed, "I can share my news." He paused dramatically. "I've been offered a junior partnership at the firm, youngest in the firm's history." "Congratulations," Savannah said, sincerely raising her glass. Whatever complicated feelings existed between them, she didn't begrudge her brother professional success. "That's our boy Thomas," clapped Kyle on the shoulder. "Always knew you were destined for greatness." "We should toast," Margaret insisted. To Kyle, proving that hard work and following the right path leads to success, Savannah sipped her champagne, letting the pointed message wash over her. Even now, with her own business thriving, her path was still the wrong one in her mother's eyes. Dinner proceeded with predictable dynamics, extensive discussion of Kyle's accomplishment, detailed questions about his new partnership responsibilities, and speculation about his future prospects. Savannah's Café received cursory attention with her mother, asking a few surface-level questions before smoothly redirecting the conversation back to Kyle's promotion. As Savannah helped clear the table after dessert, Kyle followed her into the kitchen, his champagne glass still in hand. "They're never going to see it, you know," he said quietly. Savannah placed dishes in the sink. "See what you've built is actually impressive." Kyle leaned against the counter. "They're hardwired to measure success by their standards, not yours." The unexpected insight from her brother, who had always seemed to revel in their parents' favoritism, caught Savannah off guard. "Why did you tell them about the cafe?" she asked. After all this time, Kyle swirled his champagne, not meeting her eyes. "One of the senior partners came back from your place raving about it. Dad was there when it happened, some function at the firm. The look on his face when Jameson said Whitaker's daughter has created something special downtown was," he chuckled, "well, priceless." "So you thought you'd see it for yourself, something like that?" Kyle's expression turned contemplative. "You know what Jameson said to me afterward. He said, 'Now there's someone who clearly loves what they do.' Like it was remarkable." Savannah waited, sensing there was more her brother wanted to say. "Do you?" he finally asked. "Love what you do, every day," Savannah answered without hesitation. "Even the hard days." Kyle nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." He set down his glass suddenly, looking weary despite his professional triumph. "You know what I realized watching you at the cafe? You've never once looked at your business the way I just looked at my partnership news." "What do you mean? Like you're trying to convince yourself it's enough?" Kyle's admission hung between them, more honest than anything he'd ever shared with her. "Don't get me wrong, I wanted the partnership, worked my ass off for it. But when it finally happened, there was this voice asking, 'Now what?' Like climbing to the next prescribed rung isn't as satisfying as they promised it would be." From the dining room, they could hear their parents still celebrating, planning how to announce Kyle's promotion to their friends and extended family. The contrast between their enthusiasm for his conventional success and their lukewarm acknowledgement of Savannah's entrepreneurship couldn't have been starker. "They're planning a party," Kyle continued, "to celebrate the partnership. Dad's inviting half his golf club, Mom's calling relatives who haven't visited in years. It's like their personal victory." He paused. "Did they ever offer to throw a party for your cafe opening?" Savannah laughed softly. "They didn't even come to the opening." Kyle winced. "Yeah, that tracks." For the first time, Savannah felt something other than resentment toward her brother, perhaps something closer to compassion. He had followed the path laid out for him perfectly, yet didn't seem to find it as fulfilling as their parents had promised. The funny thing is, she offered I'd have given anything for them to believe in my cafe, the way they believed in your law career. But now that it's successful, I'm not sure their approval would mean much. Kyle nodded, understanding in his eyes. Success on your own terms changes things. It does, Savannah agreed. Though I'd still take a congratulatory banner on the mantle. They shared a genuine laugh, perhaps the first in their adult lives. Their moment of connection was interrupted by Margaret, who bustled into the kitchen with more dishes. Kyle, honey, the Hendersons just called to congratulate you. Come speak to them. As Kyle moved to leave, he hesitated. You should know they're going to ask you for something. That's part of why they wanted you here tonight. Before Savannah could ask what he meant, he was gone, reclaimed by their parents' celebration of his accomplishment. She finished loading the dishwasher, her mind racing with possibilities. What could her parents possibly want from her after years of dismissing her choices? The answer came during coffee in the living room as the celebration of Kyle's news wound down. Savannah, her father, began setting down his cup with deliberate care. Your mother and I have been thinking, now that your cafe seems to be establishing itself, we might have a proposition for you. Margaret nodded encouragingly. A way for us to support your business while helping the family. Savannah waited, a sense of foreboding settling in her stomach. Your father's investment group is looking at properties downtown, Margaret continued. And we thought with your knowledge of the area and customer base, you might help us identify promising locations for development. We'd compensate you for your time, of course, Thomas added. And if things go well, perhaps discuss having your cafe as a tenant in one of our new properties. You could expand. The proposition was presented as an opportunity, a gesture of support for her business. But Savannah recognized it for what it was. An attempt to retroactively attach themselves to her success, to reframe her achievement as part of the family enterprise they had always valued. I appreciate the offer, Savannah said carefully, but Pros and Pastries is doing well where we are. Elena and I don't have expansion plans at the moment. Elena again, Margaret sighed. Savannah, at some point you need to consider family interests. Kyle has always understood the importance of connections and mutual support. Kyle surprisingly didn't back their parents up. He sat silently watching the interaction with newfound awareness. My business partner is family to me, Savannah replied, a firmness in her voice that surprised even herself. She believed in me when no one else did. Thomas frowned. That's unnecessarily dramatic. We've always supported your interests. No, Savannah corrected gently. You tolerated my interests, while making it clear they weren't valuable. There's a difference. The conversation deteriorated from there, with her parents expressing disappointment in her lack of family loyalty, and Savannah maintaining her boundary with a calm that came from knowing she no longer needed their approval. As she prepared to leave, Kyle followed her to the door. That was impressive, he said quietly. What was standing your ground? I don't think I've ever seen you do that with them before. Savannah considered this. I guess I never had solid ground to stand on until now. Kyle nodded thoughtfully. See you around, sis. Maybe at your next author event. For the first time in years, Savannah felt like she might be developing a real relationship with her brother, one based on mutual respect rather than competition. I'll save you a seat. The weeks following the family dinner brought unexpected developments. Kyle began stopping by the cafe regularly, sometimes for coffee, but increasingly to talk with Savannah. Their conversations, initially awkward, gradually evolved into genuine exchanges about their lives and ambitions. The partnership isn't what I expected, Kyle admitted during one of these visits 6 weeks after his promotion celebration. More paperwork, less courtroom drama. Definitely less fulfilling than they made it sound. Savannah, wiping down tables after the lunch rush, raised an eyebrow. You could always open a cafe. Kyle's surprised laughter suggested the joke had hit closer to home than she'd intended. Can you imagine Dad's face? Both children abandoning respectable careers for, what did he call it? Playing restaurant. You have other options besides law and food service, Savannah pointed out. What would you do if Mom and Dad's opinions weren't a factor? The question clearly stumped Kyle, as if he'd never seriously considered a life path not pre-approved by their parents. I used to write, he finally said, the admission coming reluctantly. In college, before law school, nothing published, just stories I enjoyed creating. Savannah remembered this about her brother, how he'd filled notebooks with fictional adventures before their father had steered him toward debate team and pre-law courses. The creative spark had been methodically extinguished, labeled impractical, and replaced with more suitable ambitions. The cafe hosts a writers' group on Thursday evenings, she offered. Nothing formal, just people who gather to work on their projects. You could drop by sometime. Kyle's expression was a complex mixture of interest and alarm. I haven't written anything in years. Maybe it's time to start again. Their growing rapport was interrupted by a more troubling development. Thomas Whitaker's investment group had purchased a building just 2 blocks from Prose and Pastries, the historic Marshall building that had housed several small businesses for decades. Rumors of massive rent increases and renovation plans that would displace current tenants began circulating among the downtown business community. Elena brought the news to Savannah one morning, her expression grim. Your father's group sent notices yesterday. The vintage clothing shop and the record store are already looking for new locations. They can't afford the proposed increases. Savannah felt a sinking sensation. The shops Elena mentioned were part of what made their downtown block special, independently owned businesses that contributed to the area's unique character and drew the diverse clientele that kept Prose and Pastries thriving. They're calling it revitalization, Elena continued, disgust evident in her tone. But it's just displacement with a prettier name. Replace local businesses with high-end chains that can afford premium rents. The strategy was familiar to Savannah. Her father had always discussed his real estate investments in terms of upgrading areas with little concern for what was lost in the process. But now it was happening in her community, affecting people she had come to care about. When Kyle visited later that week, Savannah confronted him. Did you know about Dad's purchase of the Marshall building? Kyle's hesitation was answer enough. I heard them discussing it. They've been planning it for months. And you didn't think to mention it. Those businesses are our neighbors, Kyle. Jenna from the record store comes in every morning. The vintage shop sends customers our way all the time. I didn't realize it would affect you directly, Kyle defended, though his discomfort suggested otherwise. Dad's been acquiring properties downtown for years. It's what he does. It's different now, Savannah insisted. This isn't just business, it's my community. These are people I care about. The conversation ended unresolved, with Kyle promising to see what he could find out about his father's plans. Savannah wasn't optimistic about his intervention making any difference. Her concerns deepened when Margaret appeared at the cafe the following Tuesday, examining the space with calculating eyes. Mom Savannah greeted her with surprise. I didn't know you were coming by. Just thought I'd see how things are going, Margaret replied, her attention focused on the cafe's layout rather than her daughter. Business, still good, better every month, Savannah confirmed, wariness creeping into her tone. Margaret nodded absently. Your father's quite impressed with what you've built here. We've been discussing it quite a bit recently. Something in her mother's tone set off warning bells. Oh, in fact, he's mentioned that your cafe concept would be perfect for the Marshall building once renovations are complete. The corner space would give you so much more visibility than this location. The suggestion, presented as a generous offer, revealed the true nature of her parents' sudden interest in her business. They weren't acknowledging her success, they were trying to co-opt it. We're very happy here, Savannah stated firmly. Our customers know where to find us, and we have a great relationship with our landlord. Margaret waved this away. Downtown is changing, Savannah. Smart business owners position themselves ahead of the curve. Your father could ensure you get preferential terms on the new space, at the expense of businesses that have been in that building for decades, Savannah noted. Businesses that are part of what makes this neighborhood special. Progress requires change, Margaret replied dismissively. Those shops can relocate to more suitable areas. More suitable meaning less visible and less profitable, Savannah translated. So they slowly die while chains take their place. Margaret's expression hardened. I thought you developed business sense. Clearly, you're still letting sentimentality cloud your judgment. It's not sentimentality to care about your community, Savannah countered. It's the foundation of my business model. Pros and Pastries exists to be part of this neighborhood, not to help displace it. The conversation deteriorated further, ending with Margaret's thinly veiled warning that refusing to work with her father's development plans could have unfortunate consequences. The threat lingered in Savannah's mind long after her mother left. That evening, as Savannah described the encounter to Elena, her business partner's expression grew increasingly concerned. They're not just offering you space in their building, Elena concluded. They're trying to use your success to legitimize their development approach. See, even our daughter's beloved local cafe supports our vision for downtown. I won't be their poster child for gentrification, Savannah stated firmly. Good, Elena nodded. Because there's more. I've been talking with other business owners in the area. Your father's group has been buying properties systematically, creating a footprint that surrounds this entire block. The implication was clear. Eventually, they would come for the building that housed Pros and Pastries. We need to get ahead of this, Elena advised. Your cafe has become a community hub. People listen to you now. If there was ever a time to use that influence, it's now. Savannah thought about the community board in their cafe, filled with local events and announcements, the authors and musicians who performed there regularly, the customers who came daily not just for coffee but for connection. You're right, she decided. It's time to fight back. What neither of them could have anticipated was how quickly the situation would escalate, or how Savannah's stand against her family's development plans would thrust her into the center of a larger conflict that would force her to choose between family loyalty and her own principles. The next morning, Savannah arrived at Pros and Pastries earlier than usual, determined to formulate a plan. She created a special section on the community board dedicated to neighborhood news, prominently featuring information about the Marshall building situation and contact details for the city council members who would need to approve any major development permits. By mid-afternoon, the cafe was buzzing with concerned conversations. Jenna from the record store and Marcus from the vintage clothing shop stopped by, grateful for Savannah's support and eager to discuss resistance strategies. We're organizing a community meeting, Marcus explained, getting all the affected businesses together, along with residents who care about preserving downtown's character. Would you be willing to host it here? Savannah agreed, without hesitation, scheduling the meeting for the following Monday evening after closing hours. What she hadn't expected was the overwhelming response. Over 50 people packed into the cafe that night, including several local reporters alerted to the story of small businesses banding together against corporate development. Standing before the gathered crowd, Savannah felt a momentary panic. She had never intended to become the face of neighborhood resistance, especially not against her own family's business interests. But looking at the familiar faces, customers who had supported her from day one, fellow business owners who had welcomed her to the community, she knew she couldn't back down. The proposed development isn't just about higher rents, she explained to the attentive room. It's about the soul of our downtown. What makes this area special isn't fancy facades or corporate retailers. It's the unique character that comes from independently owned businesses with deep community roots. The meeting resulted in an action plan, a petition drive, coordinated communication with city officials, and a social media campaign highlighting what would be lost if the Marshall Building businesses were forced out. Savannah, with her business background and personal connection to the issue, was unanimously voted to lead the coalition. The story was picked up by local news the very next day, with one headline particularly devastating to her family's image. Café owner leads fight against own family's development plans, community over profit. Savannah hadn't used those exact words, but the sentiment was accurate. The article included a photograph of her standing in front of Pros and Pastries, alongside quotes about preserving downtown's unique character. Her phone rang less than an hour after the story broke. Thomas Whitaker's voice was cold with fury. "What exactly do you think you're doing, standing up for my community?" Savannah replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "By publicly undermining your family. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? Dad, this isn't about you. It's about protecting businesses that have been part of downtown for decades. This is business, Savannah. Not some sentimental crusade. Properties change hands, tenants come and go. That's how progress works. Not all change is progress," Savannah countered. "Sometimes it's just destruction disguised as improvement." The conversation devolved into her father's threats about consequences and demands that she publicly retract her opposition. Savannah refused, ending the call with a finality that felt like closing a chapter. Her mother's call came next, full of emotional manipulation about family loyalty and thinly veiled suggestions that Savannah's cafe might face mysterious difficulties if she continued her opposition. "Your father has significant influence with city inspectors," Margaret reminded her. "It would be a shame if Pros and Pastries suddenly had compliance issues." The threat was unmistakable, and Savannah felt a chill at how quickly her parents had resorted to intimidation. She shared these developments with Elena, who immediately contacted their lawyer to document the threats. "They're showing their true colors," Elena observed grimly. "But they've miscalculated how much community support you have." This proved true in the days that followed, as regular customers made a point of expressing their support, and the petition against the development gathered over 3,000 signatures. Local media continued covering the story, framing it as a David versus Goliath battle for downtown's future. The unexpected twist came from Kyle, who appeared at the cafe late one evening as Savannah was reviewing financial reports. His expression was troubled as he took the seat across from her. "I'm being pressured to speak against you publicly," he admitted without preamble. "Dad wants me to give a statement to the press about how you're misrepresenting the development plans out of some personal vendetta." Savannah set down her pen. "And will you?" Kyle stared at his hands. "I've always done what they wanted. Followed the path they laid out. It's what earned me their approval all these years." He looked up, conflict evident in his eyes. "But I've been thinking about what you asked me, what I would do if their opinions weren't a factor. And I wouldn't be helping them push out local businesses for more profitable tenants," he stated simply. "I've read the internal documents, Savannah. They're planning to triple the rents after renovation. No small business could survive that." Savannah felt a surge of hope at her brother's unexpected honesty. "So, what are you going to do?" Kyle took a deep breath. "I'm going to give a statement to the press. But not the one Dad wants." He pulled out his phone, showing Savannah a draft email to the reporter who had been covering the story. "I'm going to confirm that the rent increases would be prohibitive for current tenants and that there are already agreements in principle with national chains to take over the spaces." The potential consequences of such a statement weren't lost on either of them. Kyle would be effectively ending his golden child status and likely damaging his position at the law firm, which handled much of their father's business. "Are you sure about this?" Savannah asked. "You know how they'll react." Kyle's laugh held little humor. "Probably the same way they've always reacted to you: disappointment, manipulation, threats. I'm just getting a late start on standing up to them." The solidarity Savannah felt with her brother in that moment transcended their years of strained relations. For the first time, they were truly on the same side. "There's something else," Kyle added, his expression becoming more serious. "I've been looking into the financing for the Marshall Building purchase. Dad's investment group used some questionable methods to pressure the previous owner into selling below market value. Nothing explicitly illegal, but definitely unethical. If that information became public, it could complicate their permit approvals. Savannah absorbed this information, torn between her desire to protect the neighborhood businesses and discomfort with publicly exposing her father's business practices. "I'm not suggesting blackmail," Kyle clarified, reading her expression. "Just that there are multiple ways to approach this fight. Legal challenges could delay the development long enough for the current tenants to organize or find suitable alternative locations." As they strategized late into the night, Savannah realized how much had changed. The brother who had once seemed to revel in their parents' favoritism was now risking everything to stand with her. And she, who had once desperately craved her parents' approval, was now leading the charge against their business interests. The conflict had escalated beyond anything she could have imagined when opening her cafe. What had begun as a personal dream had evolved into something much larger, a stand for her values and her community that would permanently alter her family dynamics regardless of the outcome. 1 year later, Savannah stood in the expanded space of Prose and Pastries, now occupying 2 adjoining storefronts in the original building. The Marshall Building across the street housed its original tenants, who had formed a cooperative to purchase the property after Thomas Whitaker's investment group withdrew their development plans amid public scrutiny and permitting challenges. Kyle, having left the law firm to start his own practice focusing on small business advocacy, sat at his usual corner table, working on his first novel between client meetings. Their parents, after months of silence, had finally acknowledged defeat and, perhaps grudgingly, their daughter's determination. Savannah had won more than a business battle. She'd reclaimed her family on her own terms. What do you think about Savannah's journey? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't believe in your dreams? I'd love to hear your stories of persistence and how it paid off for you. Drop a comment below, and if this story of sweet family karma resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons wrapped in compelling stories. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. Thank you for watching, and remember, the people who doubt you today might be asking for your help tomorrow.